Hi, I'm here to talk to you about a journey through accessing accommodations in a community college setting, my story and what you need to know. So my name is Justin George and I'm 20 years old and I'm currently a student at J. Sargent Reynolds Community College in their paralegal studies program. I do have the possibility of future college studies, maybe 2 or 4 year college, I'm not really sure. Although right now I'm going to try to finish up the paralegal program before moving on forward. But if you would have known me before, you wouldn't have even have thought that I would have been in college, but yet I'm in college. So before we move on, as a precursor to this webcast, I invite you to take a look at my first webcast called Progressing Through Transition. And since my first webcast, some things have changed both personally and academically. However, don't worry because all the changes are good. So the college process, it needs to start early. During high school, I wasn't really thinking too much about college at all. But luckily, my family and I, we started preparing towards the end of 11th grade. Not 12th grade, but 11th grade. And the reason for this is because for me, it went by so fast. And like I said, it's really important to start early. And before even registering, there is documentation that needs to be completed, and that's what we started with. And then in senior year, 12th grade year, I began to explore college even more, really began to look into it and see what it was all about. And I thought, well, okay, it'll just be in a few months, when in reality, it was right around the corner. And I decided on going to community college and starting with just a few classes. So now we're going to talk a little bit about applying for admission, because there's rules and regulations on applying for admission. There's many different ways to apply for admission. It depends on your situation. In my situation, I was a high school graduate with a diploma, and a standard diploma at that, and I was looking to enter community college for the first time. One of the main things is that you will need an official transcript from your prior school. So for the Office of Student Accommodations, if you find yourself in need of services through the Office of Student Accommodations, as I did, one of the things you need to do is contact the main number for the accommodations office. And at the college I go to, there is a basic form that you have to fill out, and that just helps them gather identifying information about you and also get some demographic information and so forth. And you can also ask someone for help, but you should be the one filling out that form. And if you need academic accommodations in the college, it is required to meet with the accommodations advisor to turn in that documentation. So that's one of the things I did. And that documentation helps to create what's called an accommodation notification form, or ANF. At some other colleges, it may be called something different. And the advisor, the college specialist, also gave me an overview of the procedures that I needed to follow, the specialist for Office of Student Accommodations. And in disclosure, one of the things that I like to talk about is, one of the main things I want to emphasize is, unlike high school where you have like an IEP team and the special education administrator and vice principal or whoever, they get you your IEP, you're all set to go, they give it to your teachers. Well, in college, it's not like that. You're actually responsible for disclosing your disability information, especially it's considered private information. So you have that responsibility this time. It's on you. If you need help, you can ask someone for help. You can get some advice from the accommodations office, but you are responsible for disclosing your accommodations and what you may need. And I did find that it was good to disclose to the professor, because that way I could establish the fact that I had a disability, and that way if there are any problems that arise during the semester, the professor could help me, and he or she would already know that I had academic accommodations. So as you may figure out, there are some procedures to follow with academic accommodations in the community or four-year college setting. So each semester I would email the accommodations specialist to schedule a time to come and turn in my schedule. And the reason I do that is it can be very busy or hectic at the beginning of the year. So even though for that particular reason I can stop and go in and be seated and sign in and all that, I thought that it would be very helpful for the accommodations office to, out of courtesy for them, give them a notice, hey, I'm coming in, I'm picking up my accommodations, here's my schedule. And each college may have their own procedure with this, so it is important to check. And it's also important when communicating with the accommodations office that you use your college email and you also use your student ID, because you will need to memorize or have it. And this is because when you go to the college accommodations office, you're going to fill out a form stating why you're there. One of the other things that I had to do is take a placement test. And so I took my placement test in the accommodations office. And since that time, I haven't needed to take a test in that office because many of my finals were projects or open book tests. And you'll need to schedule any tests, quizzes, or times you need the accommodations room since there's limited seating. So you're going to want to make sure that you schedule that as soon as you know that you have a test. As soon as your professor tells you you have a test, you're going to want to tell them that you have a test. So now it's time to talk about orientation and registering for classes. So this is really time for student orientation and getting to know the college, getting to be familiar with some of those procedures. So for me, I like to look at it as like putting in pieces to the puzzle together. And when I started community college, and even now, I've only taken a few classes. The reason for this is because I wanted to get used to the community college environment, but also because I had so many extracurriculars and some other activities going on. So I wanted to make sure that I was balancing my time. And I think that's important too, is make sure you balance your time with your classes and other things you have going on. Be realistic about what you can and cannot do as far as classes and scheduling them. So also too, another important point I want to make is when you're over 18, it's still a family process. However, one of the things is it's going to be up to you to give your parents access to your account, or it's going to be up to you to contact. Nobody else is going to do it for you. So, you know, if you want your parents' help, you have to say, hey, here's my college information, you know, because the college isn't going to talk to them. They're going to want to speak to you if they have to communicate with you. So just a quick word of advice about financial aid. I would fill out what's called FAFSA, and that stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. Fill out that form early. Even if you or your parents' taxes have not been completed, go ahead and fill out that form, because that is going to really help you, especially if you're going to four-year college and it can get expensive and all that, and so that's really going to help you. And it's also time to try for scholarships as well. So make sure that you're trying for those scholarships and writing for those as soon as you know what program you're going to be in and so forth. And as you've figured out by now, documentation is key. You know, of IEP, one of the things I like to make is an IEP or 504 plan by itself is not sufficient enough documentation. And the reason for this is you're going to need more recent documentation from a licensed professional. And one of the things I want to point out is, if you didn't know, you can actually get this done through DARS, which stands for Department of Aging and Rehabilitative Services. And that's the way that I got my documentation. I got it complete. And on this slide, you will also see the academic accommodations that were recommended for me. So continuing to talk about documentation and recommended academic accommodations, the evaluation that I had done through DARS, it ended up being 12 pages long. And the reason for this is that there were many essential things that needed to be included. Testing and interpretation, discussion and recommendations for academic accommodations, and also employment accommodations and learning strategies. It also included important diagnostic information as well. So when you go to orientation, and now we're talking a little bit about the college campus, you have a chance to walk your schedule. And I actually went back to the campus before the start of the first semester that I went to college to walk my schedule. The reason I did this is because it helped reduce some of those anxieties that I had about where to find the classroom and who was going to be in the classroom, what was my professor like, and that kind of eased some of my worries. So I would definitely encourage you, you can always visit the college before you start for the semester. So now you may be wondering, well, how do you get what you need in the classroom, or how do you apply your accommodations to the classroom? Well, so now that if you've applied for academic accommodations and you've gotten your recommended accommodations and you've You've got the paperwork from the office. Well, how do you get them into the classroom? So during the first week of class, or even ahead of time if possible, I would contact the accommodations office to schedule time to stop by and pick up your accommodation notification form. And one of the things I would do is give it a day to see if it's the right class for you, if you're not going to drop it or anything. And once you've done so, one of the important things is how do you actually give your professor or disclose, right? So one of the things in my experience that I found helpful is look at the syllabus and see if they've talked about handing in academic accommodations, or if there are any questions or concerns if they've outlined that in their syllabus. If so, that's a good time to meet with a professor to discuss your academic accommodations. If not, don't panic, because there's still a procedure for this. You can't just, give them your accommodations. There's a certain procedure you have to do, and that is you have to, maybe before or probably after class is a better time, talk to them and tell them that you have academic accommodations, and tell them that you want to that you have something to disclose, and if you feel comfortable doing so. And if you don't do that, then you can always call or email the professor and make an appointment to talk to them. And it's always important too, when calling or emailing the professor, to use whatever communication they have specified in their syllabus. So some examples of accommodations, academic accommodations that I use. I have time and a half on testing. The reason is, this doesn't extend my time. It's not unfair or anything, but it's because sometimes I might process things at a different speed. So, but sometimes though it doesn't apply. Like for example, my keyboarding class, it didn't apply because they actually measured my speed. However, if the professor says, okay, in another class, you have an hour to take this test, then I would have time and a half on that particular test. And for distance learning classes, sometimes they'll email your accommodations to you. So you need to make sure when you get that email that you forward it to your professor. You also identify who you are, and you do so in a proper format, and you work out your accommodations accordingly. So one of the things I want to talk about is some of the examples about accommodations, because for example, I have on the screen here, see a picture of the LiveScribe tool that I use. It's a recording/writing tool. And one of the things that I like to emphasize is, if you get the permission to record in your class, it's okay to use that recording for yourself. It's okay to, maybe if you have a study buddy or your parents or whoever, to share that recording so they can help you study. But it's not okay to maybe go posting that on social media or sharing it with a bunch of people. And the reason for this is that sometimes what the instructor says is considered the proprietary or intellectual property of the instructor. And or there's also student privacy concerns with what you record in class. So you want to make sure that you're being respectful of what you record, and make sure that you're using your accommodations responsibly. In addition, one of the other things I want to talk about is you will have a college advisor assigned to you during your course of study, especially if you're in a certificate or a degree program. They will generally assign you an advisor. So after taking some classes in my specific journey, I was unsure about what to do, and so I met with my advisor, and they helped me made some decisions and take the steps I needed to change. And that was really important, because they're there for you, and they're not going to know what you're thinking if you don't communicate with them. So it's important to communicate with them. So some of my current experiences, for me, I need a lot of support to get through difficult classes right now. And also, too, there's free tutoring that you can get through some of the colleges. Professors are also open to helping you. And if you do the work, like I said, if you do the work, they will help you. Some of them will give you advice, and they might have office hours and so forth. And also, I tend to procrastinate. I don't really have an answer to that, but I'm trying to work on that, because especially if I do want to go to more college or four-year college, procrastination is not really going to be an option anymore. And so that's why I've really, really got to focus on trying not to procrastinate. If there's one thing I can do better in college, it would probably be not procrastinate till the last minute. And then also too, my parents and other people are encouraging me to keep trying with some of this stuff. I'm the one that's in the end is going to be accountable for some of my for all of my stuff really at college. I'm the one that's going to be accountable. So some of the classes that have actually been easier for me are the concrete ones, or some that are the classes that are my interests, rather than some of the core classes or the beginning classes. And here's another thing. I actually took a yoga class. That was actually a surprise to me. And the reason is I'm not that flexible. I thought it was a girls' class, but actually there were other guys in there, so it wasn't a problem. And also, too, I got an A+. So you definitely can try new things and learn your strengths and weaknesses. So how accommodating is everyone, right? Well, in my experience, I found the instructors to be, they've been very accommodating, they've been fair. If you do the work and you understand it's your responsibility to give them your accommodations and it's your responsibility to do the work, then things should generally go well. So in conclusion, I just want to mention the fact that this is some of the key information that you'll need to know. It's not everything that you need to know, so definitely be sure to check the college policies and procedures. Also, one note that I want to mention is academic accommodations are not extra support as some people would like to think. They're not a way of cheating the system. They're a way of making sure that everyone has a fair and level playing field. So also too, it's important that since some of this was based on my personal experience, that you email or call the college with any questions that you might have, or if there's any procedures that you might want to know. It's important that you contact or email them. And one of my quotes that you'll see on the screen is, if you shoot for the moon and miss, you'll at least be among the stars. I like to look at this quote because it helps you be realistic and also go, hey, if I don't get to that big goal in college, then maybe I can at least shoot for something else and I'll still accomplish something. And in conclusion, I want to thank you for watching this webcast. I do want to thank you for watching, and I hope that you take something away from this, and I do appreciate your time with this, and I hope this information is helpful.